The millionaire CEO asked his son to choose a mother among the socialites, but he chose the black maid. "I want Vanessa." Those 3 words from a 6-year-old's mouth made every socialite in the ballroom gasp, because Vanessa wasn't one of them. She was the maid, the help, the woman his billionaire father had never even noticed. And now, with cameras flashing and whispers erupting, Rick Thompson had to make an impossible choice. Before we continue this wonderful story, click subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're listening from. Now let's get to where the story began. Rick wasn't looking for love. He'd buried that 6 years ago with his wife. What he needed was a solution, so he did what he always did. He turned it into a calculated event, a black-tie gala at the Thompson estate. Miami's most sought-after women, all hand-selected, elegant, poised, impeccable pedigrees. The press would eat it up. And at the end of the night, he'd let Liam choose the woman he connected with most. Charming, emotional, perfectly controllable. As champagne flutes clinked and designer gowns swirled across the marble ballroom, Rick watched everything with the focus of a man closing a deal. He had one objective. Which of these women would treat his son with genuine kindness? While Rick observed like a talent scout evaluating his roster, Liam was conducting his own investigation. The 6-year-old weaved through the crowd in his miniature suit, tugging at bow ties and asking the important questions. "Do you know how to make dinosaur pancakes?" he asked a woman dripping in diamonds. She blinked, confused, her smile frozen. "Pancakes shaped like dinosaurs? Darling, I don't actually cook." Liam nodded seriously and moved on. Another woman in a crimson gown bent down, her perfume so strong it made him wrinkle his nose. "Liam, sweetheart, would you like a mommy who takes you to Paris?" "I'd like a mommy who doesn't smell like flowers threw up," he whispered, then darted away. A third woman presented him with an elegantly wrapped gift. "I brought you an organic educational tablet. It has apps for learning Mandarin." Liam stared at it. "Does it play the dinosaur game?" "Well, no, but then what's the point?" He was gone before she could answer. Throughout it all, one person wasn't trying to impress anyone. Vanessa Carter moved quietly through the crowd, refilling glasses and clearing plates, her presence so seamless she might as well have been invisible. She'd learned long ago how to exist in spaces where she wasn't meant to be seen. But Liam had always seen her. When the boy tripped over his shoelaces near the dessert table, it was Vanessa who caught him before he hit the ground. When he got overwhelmed by the noise and lights, it was Vanessa who found him hiding behind the grand staircase and sat with him until he felt brave again. So when Rick finally knelt down in the center of the ballroom, with cameras flashing and guests watching expectantly, and asked his son the question that would change everything. "Buddy, who do you think could be a good mommy for you?" Liam didn't hesitate for even a second. He turned away from the parade of silk and jewels, squeezed past the rows of perfectly coiffed women, and ran straight toward the corner where Vanessa was quietly stacking empty champagne flutes. He grabbed her hand with both of his and pulled her forward into the spotlight. "This one," he announced, his voice clear and certain. "I want Vanessa." The ballroom fell into shocked silence. Someone gasped. A socialite let out a nervous laugh, certain it must be a joke, and Rick Thompson, who had never once in his career been caught off guard, felt his carefully constructed plan shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Vanessa Carter stood frozen, Liam's small hands wrapped around hers, feeling every eye in the room burning into her skin. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be invisible. That's what being good at her job meant. Anticipating needs before they were spoken, moving through spaces without leaving a trace, existing in the margins of other people's lives. But there was no margin wide enough to hide in now. "Liam," Rick's voice was tight, controlled, the tone he used in boardrooms when someone had just made a career-ending mistake. "Come here, buddy. Let's talk about this." "I already told you," Liam said, his voice small but certain. "I want Vanessa." The camera flashes intensified. Vanessa could already imagine tomorrow's headlines, the mockery, the scandal. She gently tried to extract her hands from Liam's grip, but he held on tighter. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "Your daddy needs to talk to you." What Vanessa didn't say, what she could never say in a room full of Miami's elite, was that this moment had been building for 3 years. Since the day she'd first arrived at the Thompson estate with nothing but a second-hand suitcase and the kind of desperation that makes you take jobs you're overqualified for just to keep the lights on. Vanessa hadn't always been the help. 5 years ago, she'd been on a full scholarship to Howard University, double majoring in early childhood development and psychology. She'd had plans, big, beautiful plans about opening learning centers in underserved communities, about making education accessible, about changing lives the way her own teachers had changed hers. Then her mother got sick. Stage 4 cancer, the kind that moves fast and costs everything. Vanessa withdrew from school, moved back to rural Georgia, and watched her scholarship and her dreams evaporate while she sat in hospital waiting rooms filling out insurance forms that always got denied. When her mother passed 6 months later, Vanessa was 23 years old with $47,000 in medical debt and a degree she'd never get to finish. She worked 3 jobs in Georgia, but it wasn't enough. The collection calls kept coming. So she did what broke people do. She ran toward opportunity, which in her case meant Miami, where the cost of living was astronomical, but at least the rich people paid their staff well. The Thompson estate job came through an agency, live-in position, good salary, benefits, and the kind of discretion clause that told her these people valued privacy above all else. She'd accepted before she even knew the full details. Desperation doesn't negotiate. She'd met Liam on her second day. 3 years old then, with his father's sharp features and his late mother's gentle eyes that followed Vanessa around the house with a curiosity that broke her heart. The nanny had quit the week before, and Rick was always working, so Liam spent most of his time alone with his toys, talking to himself. Vanessa couldn't stand it. Against her better judgment, she started spending her breaks with him, reading him books in funny voices, teaching him to count using dinosaur figurines, building pillow forts in the sitting room and pretending they were paleontologists discovering new species. "What's this one called?" Liam had asked, holding up a plastic stegosaurus. "That's a stegosaurus. Can you say stegosaurus?" "Stegosaurus!" He'd beamed with pride, and something in Vanessa's chest cracked open. Over time, she became the one he ran to when he had nightmares. The one who knew he liked his sandwiches cut into triangles, not squares. The one who understood that when he got quiet and clingy, it meant he was thinking about the mother he never got to meet. She never intended to become attached, but Liam didn't know about boundaries or professional distance. He just knew that Vanessa was the person who saw him, who listened to his dinosaur facts, who didn't treat his questions like interruptions. And now, because of that love, pure and uncomplicated and real, she was standing in a ballroom full of people who saw her as nothing more than an embarrassment. By morning, the internet had done what the internet does best. It took a moment and turned it into a circus. Maid. Mommy. Miami CEO's son rejects socialites for the help. Gold digger or genuine? The woman who infiltrated a billionaire's heart. From rags to riches. How one maid planned the perfect con. The comments were worse. Thousands of strangers dissecting her intentions, her appearance, her worth. Some defended her. Most didn't. By noon, #MaidMommy was trending, and Vanessa had disabled every social media account she had. Rick spent the morning on damage control calls with his PR team, his lawyers, his publicists. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had solutions. All of them involved making Vanessa disappear. When he finally summoned her to his study that afternoon, Vanessa knew what was coming. She'd been expecting it. She'd already started packing her things in her mind. Rick sat behind his massive mahogany desk, looking every bit the CEO who'd built an empire through ruthless efficiency. He didn't invite her to sit. "I'm offering you a generous severance package," he said without preamble. 6 months' salary, a glowing recommendation letter, and a transfer to our property in the Hamptons if you prefer to stay with the company. It's a clean exit for both of us. Vanessa stood perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her. She'd learned long ago how to keep her face neutral when people tried to buy her dignity. "No, thank you, Mr. Thompson." Rick's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? I appreciate the offer, but I'm not taking it. Do you understand what's happening out there?" He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the world beyond the estate. "This is a media firestorm. It's not going away. The best thing for everyone, including you, is a quiet exit." "The best thing for everyone," Vanessa repeated softly. "Or the best thing for your image?" Rick's jaw tightened. "Miss Carter." "I'm not staying for you," she said, her voice steady. "I'm staying for Liam. That little boy has already lost one mother. I won't be the second person to walk out of his life because it's inconvenient." For a long moment, Rick said nothing. He just stared at her, this woman who should have been grateful for his generosity, who should have taken the money and run. Instead, she stood there with her chin up and her eyes clear, refusing to be dismissed. "You're making a mistake," he said finally. "Maybe," Vanessa replied, "but it's mine to make." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Mr. Thompson, your son didn't choose me to embarrass you. He chose me because I see him, because I listen, because I'm there. That's all any child really wants." After she left, Rick sat alone in his study for a long time, her words echoing in the silence. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't quite name, something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. It might have been shame, or it might have been the beginning of recognition, that the woman he'd barely noticed for 3 years had been doing the job he'd failed at, being present, being real, being what Liam needed most. The rebellion started small, a refused plate of scrambled eggs, a shake of the head when the driver arrived for school. But by the 3rd day, it had escalated into full-scale warfare, and Liam Thompson, all 42 pounds of him, was winning. "I'm not hungry," Liam announced at breakfast, pushing away the perfectly plated French toast the chef had prepared. "Liam, you need to eat," Rick said, his patience already thin from another sleepless night fielding calls from investors. "Vanessa makes better breakfast." "Vanessa is staff. She has other responsibilities." "Then I'm not eating." It was the same at bedtime, the same at school drop-off. Every routine had become a negotiation, and Liam's terms were non-negotiable. He wanted Vanessa, not hovering in the background doing her job. He wanted her there, present, the way she'd always been before that horrible night when everything changed. Rick's publicist, Melissa Chen, had been calling twice daily with increasingly desperate proposals. "We need to control the narrative," she insisted during their morning call. "I've got 3 A-list socialites who'd be willing to play the fiancé role. Just a few staged photos, maybe a charity event? Absolutely not. Rick, your investors are spooked. The board is asking questions. We need to show stability. By hiring an actress to pretend to be my fiancé? How is that stable? It's better than the current headline. CEO's son prefers maid to Miami's elite. Do you know how that sounds?" Rick knew exactly how it sounded. He'd read every article, seen every mocking tweet, watched the cable news segments where pundits debated whether this was a publicity stunt or genuine chaos. His meticulously crafted image, the controlled, successful, untouchable Richard Thompson, had crumbled in one night. and his son was paying the price. By day 4 of Liam's hunger strike, Rick made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of doubling down on authority, instead of shipping Liam off to a child psychologist or bribing him with new toys, Rick did something he hadn't done in years. He cleared his schedule. "Mr. Thompson?" Vanessa looked up from the laundry room, surprise evident on her face when Rick appeared in the doorway. He never came to the service areas. "I need your help," he said, the words clearly uncomfortable in his mouth. "With Liam. He's your son. You don't need my permission to spend time with him. He's asking for you. Constantly. And I—" Rick paused, struggling with the admission. "I don't know how to get through to him right now." Vanessa set down the towel she'd been folding. "What are you asking me to do?" "Have breakfast with us. Tomorrow morning. Just be there. Please." The please seemed to cost him something. Vanessa studied him for a long moment, this man who'd tried to buy her off just days ago, who'd barely acknowledged her existence for 3 years. Now he stood in her workspace, asking for help like a man who'd finally run out of strategies. "Okay," she said quietly. "Tomorrow morning." Liam's face when he walked into the breakfast room and saw Vanessa sitting at the table, not serving, but sitting, was pure sunlight. He ran to her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and didn't let go for a full minute. "You came back," he whispered into her shirt. "I never left, sweetheart. I've been here the whole time." "Daddy said you were busy." Vanessa glanced at Rick, who had the grace to look away. "Well, I'm not busy right now. Think you could help me make dinosaur pancakes?" That's how it started. One breakfast turned into 2, then 3. Rick found himself rearranging conference calls, pushing back meetings, just to be there when Vanessa and Liam cooked together. He told himself he was observing, making sure this arrangement wasn't creating more problems than it solved. But that wasn't entirely true. He watched the way Vanessa moved through the kitchen, completely at ease, narrating each step for Liam. "Okay, now we add the baking powder. Can you count 3 teaspoons with me?" She never talked down to him, never rushed him, never made him feel like his questions were inconvenient. He watched the way she listened when Liam talked about his dreams, elaborate stories about time-traveling dinosaurs and rocket ships made of pizza. She didn't just nod absently. She asked follow-up questions. She remembered details from previous stories. He watched the way Liam transformed in her presence. The sullen, withdrawn boy who'd been refusing meals became animated again, laughing at Vanessa's terrible jokes, stealing chocolate chips from the batter when he thought no one was looking. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Rick stopped just watching. One evening, Liam convinced them both to play a board game in the living room. Something called Dinosaur Island that involved plastic figures and dice and rules Liam seemed to be inventing as they went along. "Your T-Rex can't eat my Stegosaurus," Liam protested when Rick tried to claim victory. "They didn't even live in the same time period." "How do you know that?" Rick asked, genuinely curious. "Vanessa taught me. The T-Rex was Cretaceous period. Stegosaurus was Jurassic. Duh." Rick glanced at Vanessa, who shrugged with a small smile. "We've been reading a lot of dinosaur books." "A lot," Liam emphasized. "Like maybe 1,000. "Definitely at least 12, Vanessa corrected, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Rick found himself smiling. Actually smiling. When was the last time he'd done that? Later that week, while Rick was working in his study, Liam appeared with a piece of construction paper covered in crayon drawings. 3 figures standing in front of a house, a tall one in a suit, a smaller one in a dress, and a tiny one between them holding both their hands. "That's us," Liam announced proudly. "That's you and Vanessa and me. We're a family." Rick stared at the drawing, something tightening in his chest. "Liam, I know Vanessa's not really my mom," Liam said quickly, "but she feels like one. Is that okay?" "How do you tell your 6-year-old that feelings aren't convenient? That the woman he loves doesn't fit the Thompson image? That love isn't something you can schedule or strategize? Yeah, buddy, Rick heard himself say. That's okay. That night, after Liam was asleep, Rick stood in his study looking at the crayon drawing his son had left behind. He'd spent 6 years building an empire for Liam's future, creating generational wealth, securing a legacy. He'd measured success in stock prices and real estate holdings and the respect of other powerful men. But what was it all worth if his son was drawing pictures of a life he didn't have? If the only time Liam smiled was when a woman Rick had barely noticed was in the room? Rick had always believed that love was weakness, that sentiment was a liability, that the measure of a man was what he built, what he controlled, what he owned. But standing there in the darkness, holding a 6-year-old's drawing, he wondered if he'd been building the wrong thing all along. Rick told himself the background check was necessary. Due diligence. He was a CEO, after all, and Vanessa Carter had somehow become central to his son's emotional well-being. He needed to know who she really was. That's what he told himself as he opened the file his head of security had compiled. What he found made him set down his scotch and read it twice. Vanessa Marie Carter. Full academic scholarship to Howard University. Dean's List every semester. Double major in early childhood development and psychology. Projected to graduate summa cum laude. Then nothing. A sudden withdrawal in her junior year with no explanation in the official records. But Rick's investigator had dug deeper. Hospital records in Brunswick, Georgia. Oncology ward. Patient name, Patricia Carter, Vanessa's mother. Death certificate dated 6 months after Vanessa withdrew from school, followed by a cascade of medical debt. Collections agencies. 3 simultaneous jobs, waitress, retail clerk, night shift at a gas station. Rick sat back in his leather chair, the file open on his desk. This woman he'd barely looked at for 3 years, who he'd dismissed as just the help, had sacrificed everything to care for her dying mother. She'd given up her dreams, her future, her education, and ended up here, clearing his champagne glasses and making his son's breakfast. She wasn't trying to climb the social ladder. She was just trying to survive. The realization sat heavy in his chest, uncomfortably close to shame. He didn't plan to bring it up. But that night, after Liam had finally fallen asleep on the couch during their 3rd viewing of a dinosaur documentary, Rick found himself in the kitchen where Vanessa was preparing Liam's lunch for tomorrow. "You don't have to do that," Rick said from the doorway. "The kitchen staff, I know, but Liam likes when I make it. He says the sandwiches taste better when they're cut into triangles." She glanced up at him, her expression cautious. They'd been existing in this strange limbo for 2 weeks now. Not quite employer and employee, but certainly not equals. "Did you need something?" Rick moved into the kitchen, suddenly unsure of himself in a way he hadn't been since his 20s. "I had a background check done on you." Vanessa's hands stilled on the sandwich. "Of course you did. Howard University, full scholarship. You were going to graduate with honors." She didn't look at him. "That was a long time ago. Your mother got sick." Now Vanessa did look up, and Rick saw something flash in her eyes. Grief, yes, but also a fierce privacy that he'd just violated. "Is there a point to this conversation, Mr. Thompson?" "Rick. Just call me Rick." He pulled out a chair and sat at the kitchen island, a gesture so informal in his own house that it felt foreign. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That I had dreams once? That life happened?" Vanessa returned to the sandwich, her movements precise, controlled. "You didn't hire me for my resume. You hired me to keep your house clean and stay invisible. I did my job. You're doing a lot more than that now. Because your son needs me to." She wrapped the sandwich in wax paper with careful precision. "Look, I know what you're thinking. Poor Vanessa. Such potential, such tragedy. But I don't need your pity." "That's not what I'm thinking." Then what are you thinking? Rick surprised himself with his honesty. That I've been in the same house with you for 3 years and never once saw you. Really saw you. And I'm wondering what else I've been missing. Vanessa met his eyes across the kitchen island. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Liam's soft breathing from the living room. "I'm making tea," Vanessa said finally, her voice softer. "Would you like some?" It felt like an olive branch. Rick nodded. They sat across from each other with steaming mugs between them, the formality of their usual interactions slowly dissolving in the quiet intimacy of the late-night kitchen. "I wanted to open learning centers," Vanessa said suddenly, her eyes on her tea. "In communities where kids don't have access to quality early education. I had it all planned out. The curriculum, the funding model, even the name, Bright Beginnings." She laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. "Sounds naive now. It sounds beautiful. It was just a dream. Dreams don't pay medical bills." "They could, though, with the right support." Rick leaned forward. "What if—" "Don't," Vanessa interrupted gently. "Please don't offer to throw money at my past. I'm not telling you this so you'll save me. I'm telling you because you asked, and because—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I need you to understand something. I don't want Liam's love because of what it could get me. I don't want anything from you except the right to care about your son without being treated like I'm running a con. I never thought—" "Yes, you did. That first day after the gala, you tried to buy me off. You assumed I was playing an angle." She held his gaze steadily. "I know I'm not the kind of woman your world accepts. I know what I look like to them, to you, the help who got ideas above her station. But Liam didn't choose me because of what I wear, or where I went to school, or how much money I make. He chose me because I see him, because I love him." The words hit Rick with unexpected force. She was right. About all of it. He had assumed the worst, had reduced her to a problem to be solved with money and strategy, had never considered that maybe, just maybe, love didn't require credentials. "I'm sorry," Rick said, and meant it. "For the assumptions, for not seeing you, for—" He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. "All of it." Vanessa studied him for a long moment. "Why are you really here, Rick? In this kitchen at midnight, drinking tea with your maid?" It was a good question. Rick had built a career on always having the right answer, the perfect strategy. But sitting here with Vanessa, he found himself without a script. "Because," he said slowly, "I've spent 6 years building an empire for my son. And it took him 30 seconds to show me I've been building the wrong thing." Vanessa's expression softened. "You love him. That's not nothing. But it's not enough, is it? He needs more than my money and my name. He needs—" Rick trailed off, suddenly aware of how close Vanessa's hand was to his on the counter. "He needs what you give him. Presence. Patience. The feeling that he matters more than whatever else is happening. You could give him that too." "Could I?" Rick's laugh was hollow. "I don't know how to be that person anymore. I don't know if I ever was." "You're here now," Vanessa said simply. "That's a start." Their eyes met, held. Rick became acutely aware of the space between them, how easy it would be to lean forward, to close that distance, to find out if the pull he'd been fighting for weeks was mutual. Vanessa must have felt it too because she pulled back, stood abruptly. "It's late. I should— Stay." The word came out rougher than Rick intended. "Just for a minute." But Vanessa was already moving toward the door, toward safety, toward the boundaries that had kept her employed and invisible for 3 years. At the threshold, she turned back. "Good night, Rick." After she left, Rick sat alone in the kitchen with 2 mugs of cooling tea and the unsettling realization that somewhere in the past few weeks, Vanessa Carter had stopped being invisible, and he had no idea what to do about it. The article dropped at 6:47 a.m., strategically timed to catch the morning news cycle. Calculated seduction: how a maid orchestrated the con of the century. By the time Rick saw it over his morning coffee, it had already been shared 40,000 times. The byline belonged to Alicia Stratford, one of the socialites from the gala, a woman whose barely concealed fury at being passed over had been immortalized in a dozen viral photos. But it was the anonymous source close to the Thompson household that made Rick's blood run cold. She knew exactly what she was doing, the source claimed. Vanessa Carter deliberately positioned herself as the boy's caregiver, manipulating a grieving child's emotions to secure a place in one of Miami's wealthiest families. This wasn't love. It was strategy. The article detailed a fabricated timeline. Vanessa allegedly researching the Thompson family before applying for the position, deliberately befriending Liam while keeping Rick at a distance, even coaching the boy on what to say at the gala. It was all lies, but it was convincing lies, wrapped in just enough truth to be believable. By noon, the story had been picked up by 3 major news outlets. By evening, #MaidGate was trending nationally. Rick's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members, investors, his lawyer. Everyone had the same message: distance yourself from this woman before it destroys everything you've built. But it was the text from his head of security that made his stomach drop. Reporters camped outside the estate. They're asking staff for interviews. Some are accepting. Vanessa saw the article in the staff break room. One of the housekeepers had it pulled up on her phone, and the pitying look she gave Vanessa said everything. "It's not true," Vanessa said quietly, though she knew it didn't matter. Truth was irrelevant when the lie was more entertaining. By afternoon, her phone, the one she'd reactivated thinking the worst had passed, was flooded with messages. Death threats mixed with marriage proposals, strangers dissecting her motives, her character, her worth. Someone had found her old Facebook photos and was sharing them with cruel commentary about her appearance, her clothes, her life. She disabled the phone again and threw it in a drawer. But the damage was spreading beyond social media. That afternoon, while Vanessa was helping Liam with his homework, the boy's tablet pinged with a message from a classmate's parent group chat. Liam, not understanding, showed it to her. "Should we be concerned about the Thompson situation? That woman clearly has an agenda." Vanessa's hands trembled as she gently took the tablet and closed the app. "Why does everyone keep talking about you?" Liam asked, his young face creased with confusion. "Sometimes people make up stories, sweetheart. It's not your fault." "Are you leaving?" His voice went small, fearful. "Everyone keeps saying you're going to leave." "I'm not," Vanessa started, but she honestly didn't know how to finish that sentence. The breaking point came at school pickup the next day. Liam's private academy had always been a sanctuary of privilege and discretion. But when Vanessa arrived to pick him up, something she'd done dozens of times before, she found Liam sitting alone on the front steps, his backpack clutched to his chest, tear tracks on his face. She rushed to him. "Liam, what happened?" "They said you're a bad person." His voice broke. "They said you're trying to steal our money. Jackson's mom said his mom said you're a—" He stopped, the word clearly something he didn't understand but knew was meant to hurt. Vanessa pulled him into her arms, rage and helplessness warring in her chest. "Listen to me. None of that is true. Do you hear me? None of it." "Then why won't it stop?" She had no answer for him. It was Rick who found them 20 minutes later, still sitting on those steps. He'd left a board meeting mid-presentation when his assistant told him about the incident. He'd broken every speed limit getting there. "Daddy!" Liam broke from Vanessa's arms and ran to his father. "They were mean to Vanessa. You have to make them stop." Rick knelt down, his hand on Liam's shoulder. "Did someone hurt you?" "They pushed me." Liam's voice was defiant now, proud even. "Because I told them they were wrong about Vanessa. I told them she's good and they're liars. Then Jackson pushed me and I pushed him back, and now the principal wants to talk to you." Rick's jaw clenched. He looked up at Vanessa, who was standing now, trying to compose herself, trying to be professional even as her world crumbled around her. "Get in the car," Rick said. "Both of you." That evening, after a tense meeting with the principal, after settling Liam in bed with extra stories and reassurances, Rick finally exploded. He fired his entire PR team over a conference call that lasted 3 minutes. Every publicist, every media consultant, every person who'd spent the last month telling him how to manage this situation, gone. Then he drafted a press release himself. No corporate speak, no carefully crafted non-denial denials. Just the truth, raw and unpolished. His lawyer tried to stop him. "Rick, you can't just watch me." The statement went out at 9 p.m. "For weeks, I've allowed my silence to be interpreted as complicity in a character assassination. That ends now. Vanessa Carter is not a gold digger, a schemer, or a con artist. She is a woman of integrity who has shown my son more genuine care than anyone in his life, except his late mother. The anonymous sources and fabricated timelines say more about the people inventing them than they do about her. My son was bullied today because adults decided cruelty was more entertaining than truth. So here's the truth. Vanessa Carter earned my son's love the old-fashioned way, through kindness, patience, and presence. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." The statement ended with his direct office line. Within an hour, his phone was ringing off the hook. His board chair, his biggest investors, all of them furious, all of them demanding he retract it, all of them warning him about the consequences. Rick ignored every single call. Instead, he walked down the hall to the small bedroom where Vanessa had retreated after putting Liam to sleep. He knocked softly. She opened the door, her eyes red but her spine straight. "You shouldn't have done that." "Yes, I should have. You're going to lose everything." "Then I'll lose everything." Rick stepped closer. "Liam was pushed today because he defended you. 6 years old, and he already has more courage than I do. More clarity. He knows what matters. Rick, for years I built my life around power, around image, around what other people thought." His voice was rough with emotion he'd kept buried for too long. "But my son reminded me what real love looks like. And it looks like you." Vanessa's breath caught. "You don't mean that." "I do." Rick reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I'm not saying this to prove a point. I'm saying it because it's true. Liam didn't just choose you. I do too." For the first time since the nightmare began, Vanessa allowed herself to hope. "What happens now?" "Now?" Rick's smile was grim but determined. "Now we fight back." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. Rick arrived at 7:45, perfectly pressed suit, zero sleep, and a resignation letter in his briefcase that he hoped he wouldn't have to use. The conference room fell silent when he walked in. 12 faces, some sympathetic, most hostile, stared back at him from around the mahogany table. These were the men and women who'd helped him build Thompson Industries from a mid-sized investment firm into a billion-dollar empire. They'd been with him through market crashes, hostile takeovers, and the death of his wife. But this was different. This was personal. And personal was messy. Gerald Hutchinson, the board chair and Rick's mentor for 15 years, didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Rick, sit down. We need to talk about your future with this company." "I'm aware." "Are you?" "Because your little press release last night cost us 3 major investors. Pemberton pulled out completely. The merger with Castellan Holdings is on hold, and I've had calls from every major shareholder asking if you've lost your mind." My mind is perfectly clear. Then explain to us, another board member interjected, a sharp-featured woman named Patricia Lowe, why you're willing to tank this company's reputation over your household staff. Rick set his briefcase on the table with deliberate calm. First, Vanessa Carter isn't just household staff. She's the woman my son chose as his mother figure, and she's earned that position through 3 years of genuine care. Second, I'm not tanking this company's reputation. I'm refusing to sacrifice a good woman to protect a false image. Image is everything in our business, Patricia shot back. You know that. No, results are everything, and my results speak for themselves. Thompson Industries has increased revenue by 47% since I took over as CEO. Our portfolio outperforms competitors by double digits. We've acquired 6 companies in 3 years and successfully integrated all of them. That's what matters, not who I date. You're dating her now? Gerald's voice rose. Rick, for God's sake. I'm stating a fact. My personal life is mine. If investors want to pull out because I defended someone from a smear campaign, then they never believed in this company's fundamentals to begin with. The room erupted in overlapping objections. Rick let them talk, his expression impassive. He'd fought in boardrooms his entire career. He knew how this worked. Let them vent, let them posture, then present the ultimatum. Finally, Gerald held up a hand for silence. Rick, we're giving you an out here. Distance yourself from this situation. Make a neutral statement. Let it blow over. The woman can stay employed if you insist, but publicly, you need to step back. No. Rick, you want to know what I learned the last few weeks? Rick stood, commanding the room the way he always had. I learned that I spent 6 years building my son a legacy while forgetting to build him a life. I learned that the people I thought mattered, the investors, the socialites, the board members, none of them were there when my son asked why everyone else had a mother. None of them taught him to read or calmed his nightmares or made him feel loved. Vanessa did. She's not a scandal. She's the best thing that's happened to my family since my wife died. Patricia's expression hardened. So you're choosing her over this company? I'm choosing integrity over image. If that's a problem, then maybe I'm not the right CEO for Thompson Industries anymore. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Gerald's face went pale. Rick, don't be rash. I'm not. Rick opened his briefcase and placed a document on the table. My resignation letter. Effective immediately if the board votes no confidence. But understand this. I built this company. I made you all very wealthy. And I'm not going to apologize for having human emotions. He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. Some looked away. Others held his gaze with varying degrees of hostility or respect. You have until end of business today to decide, Rick said. Keep me as CEO and accept that my personal life is off limits, or accept my resignation and find someone else to generate your returns. Your choice. He walked out without waiting for a response. The press conference wasn't Rick's idea. It was Vanessa's. You went to war for me, she'd said that morning over coffee, her voice quiet but firm. Now let me stand beside you. Rick had wanted to refuse, to protect her from more scrutiny, but the determination in her eyes stopped him. She wasn't asking for permission. She was offering partnership. So at 2 p.m., Rick stood at a podium outside Thompson Industries headquarters, with Vanessa on one side and Liam on the other. A sea of reporters, cameras, and microphones stretched before them. This wasn't a controlled environment. This was chaos. And Rick was walking straight into it. Thank you for coming, he began, his voice steady. I'm going to make a brief statement and then I'll take a few questions. He glanced down at Liam, who was holding Vanessa's hand tightly, his small face solemn but brave. Then Rick looked directly into the cameras. 3 weeks ago, I made a mistake. I treated love like a business transaction. I invited women to my home believing I could strategically select a mother for my son. But 6-year-olds don't care about strategy. They care about who shows up, who listens, who makes them feel safe. He paused, letting the words settle. My son chose Vanessa Carter because she's been showing up for 3 years, not for money, not for status, but because she genuinely cares. The media has spent weeks questioning her motives, painting her as an opportunist. But here's what they didn't report. Vanessa gave up a full scholarship to care for her dying mother. She worked 3 jobs to pay medical bills. She came to Miami not seeking wealth, but survival. And when she ended up in my home, she did something remarkable. She loved my son when no one was watching. When there was no reward, when it was just her job to clean the house, she chose to be more. Rick's voice grew stronger, more impassioned. So yes, this is unconventional. Yes, it doesn't fit society's expectations. But my son was bullied at school because adults decided cruelty was entertainment. And I'm not going to stand by while a good woman is destroyed for having the audacity to care. He reached for Vanessa's free hand. She took it. I'm not asking for approval. I'm stating a fact. This is my family. Anyone who has a problem with it can direct their concerns to me. The reporters erupted with questions, shouting over each other. Rick ignored them all. He looked down at Liam, who was beaming up at him with pride, and felt something shift in his chest. For years, he'd measured success in quarterly reports and stock prices. But standing here, holding Vanessa's hand while his son smiled between them, Rick realized he'd finally done something worth more than money. He'd chosen love over reputation, and whatever came next, he could live with that. The public response was split down the middle. Half the internet called Rick a hero. The other half called him a fool. Stock prices dipped, then stabilized, then, surprisingly, began to climb as the story shifted from scandal to romance. Apparently, genuine emotion was good for business after all. The board voted, 7-5. Rick kept his position as CEO, but barely. Gerald had been the deciding vote, telling Rick privately, I'm voting for you in spite of this mess, not because of it. Don't make me regret it. Rick didn't care about the margin. He'd won. But 3 days after the press conference, Vanessa came to his study with her resignation letter. What is this? Rick stared at the envelope she'd placed on his desk. What it looks like. Vanessa stood with her arms crossed, her posture defensive. I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice. Why? Because I can't do this, Rick. Her voice was tight with emotion she was barely containing. I can't be the woman you chose to prove a point. I can't be the symbol of your redemption arc or the evidence that you've changed. I need to be more than that. Rick stood slowly. You think that's what this is? Isn't it? You went to war with your board. You held a press conference. You declared to the world that I'm your family. But Rick, you never asked me. You never asked if I wanted to be the woman standing beside you while cameras flash and strangers judge every choice I make. You just decided. The words hit him like a physical blow because they were true. He'd been so focused on defending her, on proving himself, that he'd never stopped to ask what she wanted. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I don't want to be chosen to prove a point, Rick. I don't want to be the good woman in your story about learning to be human. I want... Her voice broke. I want to be loved. Really loved. Not as a symbol or a lesson, but as me. Vanessa. With all my flaws and my past and my dreams that might never come true. And I don't know if you can do that. Rick moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. Then let me show you. How? Give me time. Don't resign. Just give me a chance to do this right. Vanessa looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something she desperately needed to find. Finally, she nodded. 2 weeks. Then I'm making my own decision about what comes next. Rick started small. Too small, probably, for someone trying to win a woman's heart. But he was learning, slowly, that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about attention. He learned that Vanessa took her coffee with 2 sugars and a splash of cream, but only in the morning. Afternoon coffee she drank black. He learned that she hummed old gospel songs when she was content, and went silent when she was overwhelmed. He learned that she read poetry before bed, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, and that she'd memorized entire verses that she'd recite softly when she thought no one was listening. He learned by watching, by listening, by being present in a way he never had been before. One morning he found her sitting in the garden at dawn, her face turned toward the rising sun. He brought her coffee, 2 sugars, splash of cream, and sat beside her without speaking. They stayed like that for 20 minutes, just existing in the same space until Vanessa finally said, "This is nice." "It is," Rick agreed. "You don't have to do this, you know. The wooing. I'm not going anywhere for 2 weeks." "I know. But I want to." She glanced at him, something soft in her expression. "Why?" "Because for 3 years you saw my son. Really saw him. And I want to see you the same way. Not as the maid, not as the scandal, not as anything except Vanessa." Her hand found his on the bench between them. They sat like that until Liam's voice called from the house, demanding breakfast and announcing that today was Dinosaur Fact Day, and everyone had to listen. On Sunday morning, Rick did something he hadn't done in 6 years. He went to church. Not the prestigious cathedral where Miami's elite gathered for networking disguised as worship. The small community church in Liberty City where Vanessa sang with the children's choir every week. He sat in the back pew, unnoticed at first, and watched her come alive in a way he'd never seen. She was teaching a group of kids a song, her voice clear and joyful, her movements animated. When one little girl messed up the words, Vanessa just laughed and started over. When a boy got distracted and wandered off, she gently guided him back without frustration. This was who she was when no one important was watching. This was the Vanessa that Liam had fallen in love with. Authentic. Present. Overflowing with a kind of grace that couldn't be bought or performed. Rick felt something crack open in his chest, the final wall he'd built around his heart after his wife died. After the service, Vanessa found him outside on the church steps. "You came. I wanted to see where you go, when you're not at the estate, when you're just you. And you're beautiful." The words came out rougher than he intended. "Not the way you look, though you are, but the way you move through the world. The way those kids light up when they see you. The way you give so freely without expecting anything back. That's what I should have seen 3 years ago. That's what I'm seeing now." Vanessa's eyes glistened. "Rick, I know I'm doing this backward. I defended you before I really knew you. I made declarations before I earned the right. But I'm asking now, not as your employer, not as Liam's father, but as a man who's falling in love with you. Will you give me a chance to do this right?" A tear slipped down her cheek. "You're really falling in love with me?" "I think I have been for weeks. I was just too afraid to admit it." Vanessa studied him, and Rick felt naked under her gaze. She was seeing all of him, the CEO facade stripped away, the careful control abandoned. Just Richard Thompson, flawed and human, and terrified of losing something he'd only just found. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I'll give you a chance." Rick reached for her slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When his lips met hers, it was soft and tentative and tasted like tears and hope and new beginnings. When they pulled apart, Vanessa laughed shakily. "People are staring." "Let them," Rick said, pulling her close. "I'm done hiding the best thing in my life." The announcement came 6 weeks later, carefully timed but no less genuine for its strategy. Thompson Industries would be launching the Bright Beginnings Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to early childhood education in underserved communities. The inaugural learning center would open in Liberty City, fully funded for 5 years, and the director of programs would be Vanessa Carter, who would return to school part-time to complete her degree while building the organization. Rick made the announcement at a press conference. Vanessa stood beside him, professional in a navy dress, her natural hair styled elegantly, her chin high despite the cameras. She wasn't hiding anymore. Neither was he. "This foundation has been in development for several weeks," Rick explained to the assembled reporters. "It's built on a simple premise. Every child deserves access to quality early education, regardless of their zip code or their parents' income. Vanessa will be leading this effort because she has the expertise, the passion, and the vision to make it succeed." "Mr. Thompson," a reporter called out, "is this foundation a response to the criticism about your relationship?" "No, it's a response to a need in our community. Vanessa identified that need years ago. I'm simply providing the resources to make her vision a reality." "So you're using company funds for your girlfriend's pet project?" Rick's expression hardened. "The foundation is funded through my personal wealth, not company assets. And it's not a pet project. It's a comprehensive early childhood program designed by someone who studied this field at one of the nation's top universities. Any other questions?" Vanessa stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'd like to say something, if I may." Rick nodded, stepping back to let her take the podium. "For weeks, people have debated my motives, my character, my worth. They've reduced me to a gold digger or a saint, as if I couldn't be something more complicated, a real person with flaws and dreams and a past that shaped me." She paused, gathering herself. "I didn't plan to fall in love with Liam. I didn't strategize a way into this family. I just showed up every day and tried to be present for a little boy who needed someone. That's all any of us can do. Show up and try to be present." Her eyes found Rick's in the crowd of reporters. "This foundation isn't charity to make me feel better or to rehabilitate anyone's image. It's an investment in children who deserve the same opportunities I once had. It's personal, yes, but that doesn't make it less important." The questions that followed were gentler, more curious than cruel. By the time the press conference ended, the narrative had shifted. Not completely. There would always be skeptics, but enough. That evening, Rick hosted a gala. Not the elaborate spectacle from 2 months ago, but something more intimate. A dinner at the Thompson estate for 50 carefully selected guests, a mix of investors, community leaders, educators, and the few socialites who'd reached out privately to apologize. Vanessa moved through the crowd with a grace that surprised even Rick. She'd been nervous beforehand, worried about fitting in, about saying the wrong thing. But watching her now, he saw what he should have seen years ago. She didn't need to fit in. She belonged. "Vanessa!" Eleanor Chen, one of Miami's most respected philanthropists, caught her arm. "I've been reading about your curriculum plans. The emphasis on play-based learning and social-emotional development, it's exactly what these communities need." "Thank you. I've been studying the research for years. The first 5 years are so critical." Rick watched them talk, watched Vanessa's face light up as she discussed her vision. This was who she was meant to be. Not invisible, not diminished, fully herself. "She's impressive." Gerald appeared beside Rick, scotch in hand. "I'll admit I didn't see it at first. But watching her tonight, you chose well." "She chose me," Rick corrected. "I just finally got smart enough to deserve it." Gerald chuckled. "The board's warming up to the foundation idea. Good PR, sound investment, community impact. You might have actually stumbled into something here." It wasn't stumbling. It was listening. Across the room, Liam was showing off his latest dinosaur drawing to anyone who would look. He'd added a fourth figure to his family portrait, a small building labeled Vanessa's School in wobbly letters. "Can we be a forever family now?" Liam had asked that morning at breakfast, syrup on his chin, hope in his eyes. Rick had looked at Vanessa, who'd looked back at him with the same question written in her expression. "We're getting there, buddy," Rick had answered. "We're getting there." Later that night, after the guests had left and Liam was asleep, Rick found Vanessa on the balcony overlooking the garden. She'd kicked off her heels and was leaning against the railing, her face tilted up to the stars. "Tired?" he asked, joining her. "Exhausted, but good exhausted." She turned to him, smiling. "Did you see Liam showing everyone his drawings? He told Mrs. Patterson that his mommy was going to teach all the kids in Miami." "His mommy," Rick repeated softly. "That's what he calls you now. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay." Rick pulled a small box from his pocket. "Which brings me to something I've been wanting to ask." Vanessa's breath caught. "Rick, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out. But I also know that I don't want to spend another day without you being officially part of this family." He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "Not because it looks good for the press, not because it solves a problem, but because I love you, because my son loves you, because you've shown us both what it means to choose each other every single day." Tears spilled down Vanessa's cheeks. "You're sure? Really sure? Because once I say yes, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. That's all I want, to be stuck with you." Rick dropped to one knee. "Vanessa Marie Carter, will you marry me?" She pulled him to his feet and kissed him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." When they pulled apart, Rick slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. From somewhere in the house, they heard a door open. Small footsteps padding down the hall. Then Liam's voice, sleepy but excited. "Did she say yes? Can I come see?" They looked at each other and laughed. Rick called back, "Come on out, buddy." Liam ran onto the balcony in his dinosaur pajamas and threw his arms around both of them. "We're a forever family now?" Vanessa kissed the top of his head. "Forever family." And standing there, CEO, maid, and the child who'd brought them together, they looked less like a scandal and more like what they'd always been meant to be. A family built on love instead of image. The real kind. The lasting kind. The kind that chooses and keeps choosing. Every single day. 6 months later, the grand opening of Bright Beginnings Learning Center fell on a crisp October morning. The kind of day where Miami's humidity finally breaks and the air feels like possibility. Vanessa stood outside the converted building in Liberty City, watching volunteers hang the last of the welcome banners. Her building. Her dream. After all these years, it was real. "Nervous?" Rick appeared beside her carrying 2 cups of coffee. He knew her rhythms now, how she needed quiet moments before big events, how she'd skip breakfast if he didn't remind her, how her left hand would fidget with her engagement ring when anxiety crept in. She was doing it now. "Terrified," she admitted, taking the coffee. "What if no one shows up? What if they do show up and I mess it up? What if—" Rick silenced her with a kiss. "It's going to be perfect. You're going to be perfect. You have to say that. You're contractually obligated as my fiancé. I'm contractually obligated to love you. The compliments are just because they're true." A car pulled up, and the first family arrived. A young mother with twins who'd been on the waiting list since the center was announced. Then another family. Then 3 more. Within 20 minutes, the parking lot was full, and children were running through the brightly painted halls that Vanessa had designed herself. Everything was color and light and possibility. Reading nooks with soft cushions. art stations with washable paint, a garden where kids could plant vegetables and learn about growth. It wasn't just a learning center. It was a promise that every child deserved to be seen, nurtured, and given a chance. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was packed. News cameras, local politicians, community leaders, and dozens of families from the neighborhood. Rick gave brief remarks about the foundation's mission. Then he handed the microphone to Vanessa. She looked out at the crowd, feeling the weight of the moment. 5 years ago, she'd been dropping out of college to care for her dying mother. 3 years ago, she'd been invisible in someone else's home. Now she stood here, about to open the doors to a dream she'd once thought was lost forever. When I was studying early childhood development, Vanessa began, her voice steady, my professor told us that the first 5 years of a child's life are the most critical. That's when neural pathways form, when language develops, when children learn whether the world is safe or scary, abundant or scarce, full of love or full of lack. She paused, looking at the children fidgeting in the front row, at their parents trying to keep them still. But access to quality early education shouldn't depend on your parents' bank account. Every child deserves to be read to, played with, listened to. Every child deserves to feel like they matter. That's what Bright Beginnings is about, giving every child the beginning they deserve. Her eyes found Liam in the crowd, sitting between Rick and Rick's assistant. He was holding up a sign he'd made himself. My mom is the best teacher. Vanessa's voice caught. I learned something important this year. Love isn't always logical. Sometimes it shows up in unexpected places, in unexpected forms. Sometimes a child chooses you before you're ready. Sometimes you find family and people who weren't in your plan. And sometimes the beginning you deserve comes after you've already given up hope. She held up the scissors for the ribbon cutting. So let's begin. The ribbon fell, the doors opened, and children poured into Bright Beginnings like water finding its course. Their laughter filled the space Vanessa had built, and she felt something shift inside her, the final piece of healing clicking into place. That evening, the three of them sat at the dinner table, the same table where Vanessa had once served meals and cleared plates. Now she sat as an equal, as family, as the woman of the house. Can I tell everyone at school that you're getting married? Liam asked around a mouthful of spaghetti. You've already told everyone at school, Rick said dryly. Twice. Yeah, but now I can tell them the wedding date, June 15th. I circled it on my calendar. We all circled it on our calendars, buddy. Vanessa reached over to wipe sauce from his chin. You're still okay with being the ring bearer? I'm going to be the best ring bearer in the history of ring bearers. I'm going to walk so slow and so careful that everyone will cry from how perfect it is. Rick and Vanessa exchanged amused glances. That's the goal, Rick said. Maximum tears. After dinner, after Liam's bath and bedtime story, after the house finally settled into quiet, Rick found Vanessa in what had become their routine spot, the kitchen, late at night, cups of tea between them. You did it, Rick said simply. Your dream. It's real now. Our dream, Vanessa corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. You could have eventually, but I'm glad I got to be part of it. Vanessa reached across the counter and took his hand. Do you ever think about that night? The gala? Every day. Do you regret it? All the chaos it caused? Rick considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, his life had been orderly, controlled, successful, but hollow. Now it was messy and complicated and full of a little boy's laughter and a woman's gentle presence and morning coffee that tasted better when shared. Not for a second, he said. You and Liam are the best things that ever happened to me. Even if I had to lose everything else to keep you, I'd make the same choice. You're not going to lose everything. I know, but I would. That's the point. Vanessa stood, walked around the counter, and settled into his lap the way she did when words weren't enough. They sat like that, wrapped around each other, while the house breathed quietly around them. "I love you," she whispered against his neck. "I love you too." Upstairs, Liam slept peacefully, his latest drawing taped to the wall above his bed. 3 figures holding hands. A house, a school, a family. In the drawing, no one wore a suit or an apron or anything that marked their status. They were just 3 people, smiling, together. Because in the end, that's what love looked like. Not a fairy tale. Not a scandal. Not a redemption arc or a strategic decision. Just 3 people who chose each other every single day in the simple, profound way that builds a life. Sometimes love wears a crown. Sometimes it wears an apron. But always, always, it wears truth. And in the Thompson house, 3 plates sat at the table every morning, not for a CEO, a maid, and a child, but for a father, a mother, and their son. A forever family. Built on love that chose and kept choosing. The real kind. The lasting kind. The only kind that matters.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.